Hello and welcome back to Monday's edition of the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. My name is Craig Anderson and I'm joined by Tony Anderson.
Hello, Craig. How are we doing?
I'm doing well. It's the Anderson reunion here, and you know what happens when the Tony Anderson and Craig Anderson of the Terrace Podcast get together. We managed to talk for 90 minutes about two games, so we will prepare ourselves nicely for that, because this weekend obviously saw the two Scottish Cup semi-finals, and what to me was a bit of a preparation run for the title race, where two fairly average Old Firm outfits managed to bumble their way over the line somehow or other, despite their best efforts in both cases. So we'll talk through the two games and we'll just do them in chronological order. So we will start with Saturday. It's a thrilling encounter between Aberdeen and Celtic. It was, for those of you who missed it, a 3-3 draw, with Celtic eventually running out 6-5 winners in penalties. Some real, we can get onto the quality of the football, but some real fight shown by Aberdeen that has maybe been a little bit missing this season.
Yeah, this is one of those ones that you enjoy at the time as a fan, and then in retrospect, you're like, oh. And that's kind of been a theme for Aberdeen this season. The big games and the games where they're not fancied is when they seem to have turned up against the sort of best opposition they would play against. And I'm willing to buy into their style of play, the team that was built by Robson, all that type of stuff that fits in to explain that. But I think that can only be to a point. I think there does have to be a sort of introvert look at how much effort's been put into certain games, how much up for games, other games that they are, because each time when they've either beat the Rangers or done it to Celtic or going to Germany or going 2-0 up against Panathinaikos, it's like watching two completely different teams than when you see them come up against Ross County or whatever.
Yeah, and it has been that throughout the season, and there was a lot to like about their performance. I would say they were, for most, not for most of the game, they probably were second best in the game, but they kept themselves in it, and there was a lot of effort there that just seemed to be missing at times. Like the two games they played at Rugby Park, they never took part in the games at all. It was like they just turned up and didn't fancy it one bit. And so that has been to an extent the big difference in these bigger games for them, but also some of the same faults were still there. There were still egregious defensive errors. There was still missing of chances, like missing of really good chances. Even if they did kind of ultimately score two fairly similar goals in stoppage time, basically, of both the game and the extra time. But yeah, it felt like a real missed opportunity for Aberdeen in this. Not only in that, but then obviously they take it to a penalty shootout, and their penalties just simply weren't as good as Celtic's, and that's the frustration. Because if you are I don't say this, Aberdeen are a big club, but they're the smaller club in this game. Not often Aberdeen play a game and they're a smaller club, but they're a smaller club in this game. Things like penalty shootouts that you, to some extent, can control a little bit more, feel like the things that you should be better at, but maybe it is just simply that they don't have as good players as Celtic, because with the exception of, with one very notable exception, I thought Celtic's penalties were excellent, whereas there were several Aberdeen penalties where if Joe Hart had been any good at all, he would have saved them.
Yeah, and you were hoping with Aberdeen, with the momentum they had. Well, yeah, I was definitely hoping. I was hoping they would
get beat for selfish reasons.
I was in this middle ground between, if Hearts get through, they're more likely to beat Aberdeen than they are Celtic, although the results don't actually stand up to that this season, but you understand what I mean. But then on the other side, I'm like, but there is also the possibility of Hearts having everything snatched from them. And that was a tantalising prospect. And now the Rangers got through, I definitely wish Aberdeen had got through, but they had the momentum going into that penalty shootout. They're the ones that had delivered the sucker punch, and you often hope that sort of leads in there. And I mean, I don't want to go straight into the penalties and Joe Hart. Shall we start at the start and then move through it?
Yeah, let's move through the game. So, could not have asked for a better start, Aberdeen.
What a goal it is.
Yeah, and it's showcases the things that I think we thought we might see from Aberdeen this season. So I can remember way back, I don't remember if I did the podcast about it, if I was just talking about it general, but when they lost, I think I did do the podcast when they lost to the Swedish team and I want to say Elfsborg, it wasn't them. They've heavily lost to it in the Europa League.
Where they really
should have won because they got a 2-2 draw away from home and then they brought it back to
is it Helsingborg or something? Was it Helsingborg?
We could check. Let's not. It's better just to ignorantly. I do think it was Elfsborg.
Sorry to our Swedish listeners.
I do think it was Elfsborg, but I'm going to now prove that was wrong. Oh no, Elfsborg is who their manager.
That's who the managers come from. Jimmy Phelan. Yeah. And this is why it takes 90 minutes, Craig.
Hacking is who they lost to.
And they were fucking dismal.
Defensively, Aberdeen were terrible, but you could see lots of the nice things in attack. They had Clarkson, they had McGrath getting into spaces. They were picking lots of nice passes. Majowski had a really good game that night, if I remember correctly. This was the Pittodrie game. And you thought, right, you can really see what Aberdeen are all about here. And that first, I mean, they've not seen it this season, but that first 2 minutes in that goal showcased it all because it's such a beautiful through ball. And the finish, you never once doubted Majowski was scoring that goal.
And you're spot on as well, because just the way that the goal happens and the way that because Majowski's improvement this season was big. I mean, Majowski was great last season in terms of a goal scorer, but over the summer and in the start of this, he's took on so much more responsibility, so much better with his back to goal. And it's like you could picture the goals. I know it's not exactly what happened, but you could picture the goal of Majowski coming short, playing a pass back to Clarkson, for example, spinning, and then taking a through ball. I mean, I feel like I should be seeing that goal fairly regularly, or, I mean, not just an easy one for me to go by. You won't like it, but the goal that Fletcher scored against Kilmarnock in the League Cup final all those years ago, with like that's the kind of goal you picture those players that Aberdeen have to score fairly regularly, and you're right, it never really has happened. Majowski's had to sort of he's made it really happen. It feels like almost single-handedly, yeah. And it's just, again, if you're an Aberdeen fan, just like the theme is what I was talking about earlier, when you're watching that, you're thinking, that's so frustrating because it's all been there. All the parts are there to finish the puzzle. And it's a shame that even when it did all come together, including bringing on the sub and Julian Hoylett and the way that, and Sockler scored at the back post, what you pictured him doing at the start of the season when he's signing for 300 grand, it's all happening there, and it still actually ends up not actually gaining anything.
Yeah, and I think from the goal, the other thing that happened is after the goal, you thought, because it's almost like that, Celtic, it shouldn't affect them that much because they can just sit and go, well, it's not like we've had a bad start. Like, I mean, it's a bad start from conceding a goal, but it's not like, oh, we've been getting outplayed or anything. It's just they've defended poorly, but it's not like you've been under the cosh for 10 minutes and that goal's been coming. So you think, right, Celtic are just going to keep playing as if it's 0-0, like just how they would have started the game. It doesn't change anything from their point of view. But I thought they really struggled to get themselves properly into the game after that goal. And you were a bit, as I say, from my own selfish point of view, I was fully on board for rarely wanting Celtic to win this game because it benefited Kilmarnock in terms of European qualification. But it's like second best. If Aberdeen won, it would have still been fun. That's all right. But I was watching this and I'm like, Celtic don't really look like, it's not like they're ripping Aberdeen apart at any point. Their attacking players were doing all right. Like Kuhn, I thought, who obviously ultimately scores equaliser, had a really good game, probably the best I've seen from him. I think he has come onto a game of late. Kyogo showed what he can do, but was close to anonymous. And Yang is just simply not up to the standard. He was terrible. But they weren't really damaging Aberdeen that much. And then so it's so frustrating to concede a really cheap goal to a mistake. Like it must be so annoying because you can do everything tactically right, and I think Leven got a lot right in this game. For a young coach, and I know he's had managerial experience. He was a manager in Belarus. I'm sure I'm correct in saying before. So it's not like he's not managed a football team at all. He's definitely got a lot of coaching experience. He was involved. He was involved at Kelly, as Greg Taylor had kind of alluded to before. Before the games, he was involved at Kelly under Lee McCulloch, I think. So he's been involved in coaching, but for a young manager who's not really managed at this level to go and set up a team so well, I think he's got a lot to be proud of. If it is a career that he sees himself as being a manager, like it's probably been a really good advert to, you know, a championship club or whatever, to go, here's what I can do. But yeah, to get it all right, and then for such a really cheap goal to be given away is frustrating.
I would argue the first two goals are the two goals that Aberdeen concede are very, very avoidable. The first one, Angus MacDonald, it's not even that he wants too much time. Then eventually when he realises he doesn't have really avenues to go forward, he wants to turn back and pass it back. But that stupid roll of the studs over the ball, he doesn't actually have to do that either. He can just turn back with the ball and then be able to use his body to block off Kyogo coming. So if he doesn't use the roll of the foot like that, and he just turns it and then turns with his whole body at the same time, I don't think Kyogo's actually able to wrap around and get that. So there's so much wrong with what McDonald wants to do there that catches him. And then the second goal, McDonald's got a big part to play in that. He steps out the way when he probably could block it. And then you can also talk about Roos at that point as well.
Yeah. But I think the other thing being, like, Kyogo last season at any point under Postecoglou, you expect him to score that goal. The fact that it's a pretty poor effort, really, like for his standards. But obviously, I don't blame Roos for the save as such. He does. I think he does as much as he can do, and then it just happens to go to Kuhn, who, again, you can question in normal circumstances. If that was a Celtic attack, you could question, you know, where's your left back, where's the cover, but again, you're not expecting your centre half to be, losing the ball.
Not that much of a dumpling.
You're right. Then there's the second goal. So Celtic, I thought, started the second half like really, really strongly. It's what we've seen from them a little bit more of late. They were really running over the top Aberdeen.
Yeah, because they got a bit of a fright at the end of the first half, because Aberdeen had a really good chance to go ahead again. And this has happened a lot this season. There's no 90-minute performances for Celtic, but you felt like at the time that Aberdeen needed to take that, they needed to take a lead in the second half, because I doubt you would have been surprised to see the reaction from Celtic at that stage.
Yeah, and to be fair, Aberdeen had been, I felt they'd seen off the worst of it. Like, it really felt like in that first 5-10 minutes after half-time, it was a matter of time. And then it did feel like Celtic lost a wee bit of momentum. And then obviously the introduction of James Forrest. Now, I would argue, with the exception of that one, all of the other 5 substitutes that Celtic made in this game made them worse. But Forrest came on, and it was an almost immediate impact. And it's a guy who just loves scoring goals at Hampden. Like, there will not be many players in Scottish football history who've scored, I mean, excluding Queen's Park players, I suppose, who will have scored more goals at Hampden than James Forrest has. Yeah,
because even when he's had this bit part to play towards, he got the goal was against St Johnstone for the League Cups, and he barely played during that period, and he comes in and does it then, and just like this, off the bench, when you've barely seen him recently, and like doing what he's been doing for what feels like centuries.
And he had an attempt or a chance before it even, which was a kind of half chance, and then to me he's got no right to score from there, and it is poor goalkeeping from Roos. I think that's pretty fair. Like, it was still a good goal, and you thought at that point, to me I was like relieved a little bit. As I say, I'm talking about this from a selfish point of view. I was like, right, this game is probably beyond Aberdeen now. I didn't know they had it in them, in the sense that you've seen them do it this season. They did the big fight back against Motherwell, for example, but you still also thought, like, this Celtic team have now been putting teams away of late. They hadn't been doing it earlier in the season, but Celtic kind of stopped, and the subs, as I said, really. Now, I know McGregor's struggling with his fitness, but there was like little signs, apart from maybe the goal where I thought he was a bit slow in kind of tracking Clarkson. He was starting to grow into the game. You take him off. They took Kyogo off at that point for Ida, I think, and that was fair enough. Like, that's change they've been making all the time. But everything they did just seemed to make them that wee bit worse, and it made the game. It gave Aberdeen a wee bit of belief and a wee bit of impetus. And I feel Hoylett's introduction definitely changed the game in Aberdeen's favour, but it was also helped by the fact that Alistair Johnston seemed to have give up marking him.
Yeah. I mean, I'll go through a few of your points here. Like Forrest, is there something with the reports of what's going on with attacking midfield slots for Scotland, and the fact that Yang's rubbish, and sort of Palmer's just coming back from injury? Is there now the perfect sort of storm to come that James Forrest might end up finding his way into the Scotland squad?
And they almost the slightly extra need. I don't think he'll go, and I don't think he should go. But the extra need that someone who could in a pinch play right wing back. Is is all in play. I think if he goes down that route, Ryan Fraser's probably well ahead of him, and rightly so. But I heard that it was discussed by I can't remember if it was in commentary by Liam McLeod or if it was in the punditry after the game, but certainly it was being discussed at that point. I think it was Jonathan Sutherland after the game, but you can see where he's coming from. He's got the experience. He was in the last squad. He's been there. He's done it. But I think you saw in that game the problem with James Forrest that he decided to take him back off, and he only came on in the second half. Yeah, I mean that was a disastrous sub as well. But
you can I'm looking forward to getting to that. Yeah,
you can understand the calls because he's got experience. He's had big moments for Scotland before, but I think his time as an international player, his time as a Celtic player, let's be realistic, should have been and gone.
Yeah,
you can understand, and I don't have an issue with keeping players like that around. And I would argue it's something Rangers don't have that sometimes sets them apart. Is when things are tough. In that game, you've got a guy who has all that experience and is steeped in the club that can come on and change a game. And Rangers, through circumstance, the fact that for the bulk of James Forrest's Celtic career, Rangers were a lower league club, so they're not going to have retained guys of that age. Basically, Tavernier's as close to it as I've got, but he's actually still an important starting player. So yeah, there is an argument for that, but I say his time's away.
And then just in terms of this is like a criticism and a positive of sort of both teams. It's like, see when either of them decided to turn it on, they had the other team completely on the ropes. And it was Celtic, obviously, every time they went ahead, didn't put their foot on the throat of them. And same with Aberdeen, every time they either got back into the game or went ahead, lay off them. And it's more understandable from an Aberdeen perspective, but just that they both got to smell blood so many times, and sort of they both got to have a go at each other so many times, but they could see how vulnerable the other team were. And especially from an Aberdeen perspective, I'm always like, you don't get this all the time. They looked all at sea when Aberdeen decided it, especially when Junior Hoylett came on. He was, as you said, Johnson suddenly went from like one of the most reliable, hard-working sort of leaders that you would at Celtic and in that fullback position to suddenly he's getting like torn up, but not by any sort of spectacular play. It was just he started to become what looked quite lazy, and he just put
he wasn't there.
Yeah. He put the one where he come inside and he just put a sort of lazy leg to stop the cross. But Hoylett was just got involved in absolutely everything, and I was loving the idea of the narrative that the guy that Neil Warnock brought into Aberdeen would be the guy who would maybe get them to the cup final or eventually win them the Scottish Cup. I would have thought that would have been a lovely and very purely Scottish football way to end everything.
I'm just thinking, I didn't realise this before, I hadn't thought about it before. Like, Johnson and Hoyle are international teammates. He literally must know everything the guy can do, and yet...
you must really like him. Maybe Johnson loves Hoyle.
Just like I want to show him up, I want to make him look good.
Yeah. Maybe there's a bit of that for Celtic, is that there was a lot of cockiness. Johnson's happy in it. Hoylett looked good to try and get him back in for whatever tournament's coming up for Canada and the World Cup and all that. And then they're letting Joe Hart take penalties because he's come at the end of his career and they're hitting shots. Guys, you need to take this more seriously. You're going to lose.
But yeah, and obviously, so it did come for Aberdeen, and I mean, obviously they had that penalty shout.
I was interested in your thoughts on this.
I was watching the game about. I went out a walk, so I'd recorded it, and in fact, I was watching it on iPlayer like a wee bit behind, so I was kind of ignoring everything and the social media and stuff just to watch the game as live. And I was really confused when I was watching the commentary because Don Robertson clearly doesn't point for a penalty. He points, well, at first it looks like he does, but then because he points towards in the rough vicinity of the penalty spot, and I thought, right, because look, you watch that and you're like, oh, that's a penalty.
Yeah.
And then he turns the other way and points, and I'm like, oh, is he booked? Is he? So I knew he hadn't given a penalty. I was like, does he think he's dived there? I was like, it didn't look like a dive to me. And then obviously, because the commentary from that point on, or the camera is so zoomed in on the ref and on Carter Vickers, who thinks he's obviously
giving away a penalty.
There was no context of anything else that was going on. It was like so focused in on that.
Yeah.
And I was like, try to work out what's going on here, because I knew he hadn't given a penalty. So I'm like, what is VR checking? The player reactions were all confusing. And then the commentary's like, oh, they obviously didn't think it was enough for a penalty. And I'm like, well no, it was clearly enough for a penalty. There's been a bit of talk about times where a player, the Silva one in that Old Firm game, where a player, an attacker, has put his leg in to be kicked. To me, that's not what happened there. Hoylett thought he was getting that ball and overstretched for it, so he was in a bit of a weird position, and then Carter Vickers kicked through him. It's a very clear penalty. There was no doubt about it for me. But as we saw, what the referee had done and what had been missed is that he thought that the challenge from McDonald on Johnston was a foul. Now, I don't think it's a foul. I think or at least it's a very soft foul. So I think it was a wrong decision, but it's also one that VR is going to find hard to overturn.
Yeah, because it's not clear and obvious. It's one of those that you wish the referee would go over, because there's a few things in play for it. So it feels like they're the ones that the referee, if I'm the ref, I'd most like to go over, because I want to see the 2 or 3 incidents that are all involved in close proximity. And obviously when I've focused on one, I've missed another. Do you know? So that they're the ones that you'd probably want to have a look at. But I do understand in the rules, and since he
has to give something. Kick, he has to give something. So he either says it's a free kick or it's not a free kick. He can't say I'm not sure. Now I would argue the referee should be able to ask to come over and watch something back
if they want to.
As long as they've given a decision to start with and they've said, I'm giving a foul there. Actually, can I come and have a look at it? Maybe they probably can informally do that anyway. But nonetheless, I was puzzled because he deliberately delays the whistle so that the ball can still be in play, which is the right thing to do because the ball drops in the box. The rule says basically if the ball drops either to someone who has an immediate chance of scoring, touch and go, whether that's true, or someone with a clear run into or around the box. So to me, if you're in the box already, then you clearly have a clear run into the box. Yeah. Jack McKenzie, I think, got the ball, is in the box. And he was right. He was proved right in the sense of letting it develop because an incident happened straight after it. And had he been wrong with I think he was wrong, but had it been like egregiously wrong on the foul,
on the referee's point,
he could have given the penalty. They would have sent him over to the monitor. They'd been like, look, this foul that you've given, probably not a foul. Do you want to have a look at it again? And then he could have given the penalty. That would have been an option that he had available to him. What I found quite odd is the reaction from the Aberdeen fans as being the ones who feel like not aggrieved. I could understand feeling aggrieved by the decision, but thinking that the referee had somehow screwed them by not delaying the whistle. I'm like, if he doesn't delay the whistle, you're just getting a free kick against you.
Yeah.
So
I think so many people
better?
Just didn't realise that it was a free kick, and they still haven't realised.
But so it's like they were saying, because they gave the foul, VR couldn't get involved, and that's not true. VR could get involved if they thought the foul was wrong. So yeah, and as it turned out, and probably fortunately, because this narrative would have been even bigger, this discussion would have been even bigger, had Aberdeen not popped up with a goal, obviously 3 or 4 minutes later, basically at the tail end of the game. And we mentioned Hoylett's part in it, but it's a really good attack of the ball as well. So very badly defended from Celtic, you have to say. But it was
as both the 2 goals they concede after are hopeless. They're just like, because it's just so easy for a winger, and he's able to check in, and he's able to do the same ball just to a back post to a forward. And if we go to the last goal with Angus MacDonald, like it's it's so much fun because they make the substitution to bring Norrocky on for Forest, and then instantly that means Aberdeen it's like directly impacts the rest of the game, because they then have the ability and they're able to be bold with putting the defender up top who scores instantly.
It creates the space like in the wider areas because Celtic have narrowed their team. I mean, obviously it wasn't directly the side Forest was playing on, but they narrow their team because they take one of their wide players off. And yeah, it was a daft sub because Celtic weren't. I wouldn't argue in the extra time period after Celtic scored, which I love the goal from O'Reilly actually, which we never talked about. It's just a well worked goal and a goal that probably deserved it. If that was a goal that wins you a semi final, you're like, oh great, but
fair play. Yeah, there was 2 goals of quality with Biofsky's and O'Reilly, and then the rest are like there's good parts in them, but there's obviously clear errors.
But I would argue, unlike probably the last few minutes of the game where I felt Aberdeen were really threatening in extra time after they went behind, I was like, they had wee half chance here. And obviously, Sockler missed a chance right at the start of extra time.
Yeah,
I think he was offside anyway. I don't think he got flagged, but I think he was probably just ahead. But there were all these opportunities, but in this extra time, I was like, this game's kind of fizzling out for Aberdeen here. And then, yeah, as you say, like Rodgers just hands them the initiative a wee bit with that sub. And I mean, most of the time it doesn't matter. Like, managers chuck centre halves on at the end all the time, and it usually doesn't matter. And we only pinpoint when it does, but it just it didn't work out for them. And it's a big moment for McDonald, obviously, a guy who's battled through a lot personal like illness and stuff like that.
And also being in and out the Aberdeen team, being the main man, coming out. He's constantly having to answer for himself.
And it will be one of the biggest games of his career. And he's he's thought it's going to be remembered for him doing something incredibly stupid, and then he has a kind of heroic moment, and that was great for them. And that took penalties. I thought it was funny to look at Sockler just on his goal. Like he scored 3 goals for Aberdeen and none of them in the league. They spent all that money on a player, and I think it's 22 league games for Aberdeen and 0 league goals. But he has scored in the League Cup against Ross County. He scored in that game, and he scored in a Europa League win over Eintracht Frankfurt. So quite an odd set of goal scoring issues. That took us to the penalties, which we obviously already talked about the quality of Celtic's penalties, and I would say that Aberdeen's on the whole weren't as good, but there are obviously some major antics from both goalkeepers that are worth discussing.
Yeah, just to go to the whole Joe Hart thing, I find this like maybe the single most embarrassing decision of the season, because it is so transparent that they fucking watched the game during the week, and it's so transparent. And we're talking about a Champions League level manager and a goalkeeper who's got 75 caps for England and has won the English Premier League. And they have, it's like they're almost fanboying sort of Pep Guardiola and Ederson. And then on top of that, you've got the ego of Hart because he knows he's only got one more game. He's only going to have one more. This is basically the only moment he could score a goal. And I know it doesn't go down as a goal, but you know what I mean? Where he could score a goal and be the match winner or whatever. This will be the only point they can do it. For that would send me through the roof as a Celtic fan, because this is all ego. It's all sort of all personal preference. It's nothing to do with the bigger picture. It's nothing to do with the rest of the team. It's nothing to do with the fans in the stadium. And I have never wanted someone to miss more than Joe Hart. And on top of that, Joe Hart lost his career at the top level. And one of the main reasons for that was because he was poor with the ball at his feet. So he got emptied from Man City and he started rolling down the levels because of errors that he made in big games, but also because he wasn't particularly good with the ball at his feet in modern day football.
Also,
and when he shoots that penalty, he shoots like a goalkeeper. It is awful. The technique is absolutely awful. The way his body shape is when he kicks it is utterly outrageous.
Because I think you often see goalkeepers in penalty shootouts actually take very good penalties, because it's like they probably practice them quite a lot, because I think for saving practice for the other goalkeeper, they probably hit quite a lot of shots, maybe even more shots than the strikers do in training half the time, or at least more than the defenders do, let's put it that way. And Yeah, for his technique and for a guy who's taken penalties before in shootouts, as was mentioned, like I mean, not up top, I think, but he's certainly taken them. Yeah, it was just extremely poor in terms of the quality of it. But there was the hubris kind of matched like John Terry's famous Champions League final one, but it was like the whole country wants you to fall on your face here, and you have. I mean, in John Terry's case, almost literally, but
yeah,
it was. Yeah, it was again. Had I not been quite keen for Celtic to win this game, I would have been enjoying it a lot more. But yeah, it felt like it was that crowning glory. When Joe Hart signs for Celtic, I posted on the Terrace WhatsApp group that I thought he would score a goal for Celtic because of exactly this type of ego that he has. I still think it might ring true. It would not surprise me.
Look, in the Scottish Cup final against Rangers, would he do it again? If he's allowed to, he will.
Or if it's like the final game of the season against St Mirren and they've won the league and they get a penalty, do I think Joe Hart might step up and take it?
Almost certainly.
Yeah, I think he would think about it. So, like, yeah, it was hubristic. It was like you were like fully embarrassed for him, and he I mean, that's his character, but he didn't really seem that embarrassed about it. Like, it looked like he had a kind of wee wink. Yeah,
he was.
I understand that. I mean, it's just like a way of dealing with it, and it's probably a confidence that sometimes helps a goalkeeper, because it's like we don't want someone to go to pieces when they make a mistake. You want them to, and he does ultimately save the crucial penalty and all that. But it was just and he did have the decency not to like go daft celebrating after the crucial penalty, because that would have been quite
go around apologising to the fans.
Also, he had 2 attempts at saving penalties before that. Like the 2 that went right through his body were really, really poor. But that brings us on to the other goalkeeper whose performance in the shootout has been somewhat overlooked. That is the worst attempt at trying to psych out takers I've ever seen from Keller. It just looked stupid. Like, it wasn't like they would have been laughing at him. Like, it wasn't
making more confident.
It wasn't. It's like, this guy does not, like, he was watching Emi Martinez and
exactly.
Like,
yeah. It's so transparent. It's so like.
But Emi Martinez is good. But
these are fucking adults. These are adult men who are professional footballers. It's like, this is what would happen in the playground.
They're like the same age as us, Tony. They're not even young. Like they're both in their 30s. Like, but Roos was also absolutely terrible at even attempting to save a penalty.
He just fall down to one side.
We said, I think the Celtic penalties were good, but he made it easy for them. But also, he then has that injury.
That was hilarious. That when the linesman when the ref tried to help him up, because I don't know if I'm accepting cramp for a goalkeeper, if I'm being brutally honest, because that's what was mentioned on the commentary. I don't know how that can happen when, I mean, most people walk more at work than what he will do in 90 minutes in a game. But then when he couldn't get up and he was like a drunk guy in a doorway, and then falling back down when nearly pulling the referee down with him, because you don't know what's happening, when you're just seeing like what the fuck is going on?
So I did wonder if it was a bit of a ruse. Like, I wondered if, because I think if a goalkeeper gets injured during a
ruse
penalty,
from ruse,
it wasn't even deliberate. If a goalkeeper gets injured during a penalty shootout, it's the one case where you can use a substitute if there's a sub goalkeeper available. And I wondered if maybe is Ross doing like really good at penalties, and they've kind of fucked their chance to bring him on before the shootout, and so because Aberdeen did have a sub left, they were maybe thinking. I wondered if it was like, right, Kelly, you go out there and like fake an injury. Do you know what I mean? But obviously not, because he got back up and continued to get nowhere near Celtic penalties for the remainder of the end of the game. Because the only one Celtic didn't score was obviously cracked off the post.
He got a touch on one of them. He got a touch on one of them that went into the.
Did you think he was going to save it though?
No, I didn't. And it was a shame that it was a young lad too. I think he's a young lad, Duncan.
Yes.
That he's the one that ends up costing, and because obviously he looks absolutely devastated, and there's so many other people on that pitch that, as we've just been discussing, who you want to be the villains of this piece. But just another example of the Scottish Cup semi-finals. They really are incredible, because we've had this. I probably say this every single year, because we've got used to the fact only 2 teams can win the league. So it's just it's balls to the wall when you hit the semi-finals for the teams out with it. You know it's your only chance of doing anything. And the same for like Celtic now. League wins are meaningless. It has to be trebles to be looked at as any type of success. So there just always just seems so much on the line that isn't the same case in any other domestic tournaments around Europe. Although that time might come for some of them because they're all starting to get used to the duopolies and monopolies of their leagues as we go. But I think we got the opposite of this in the other game that we'll probably be going on now, because that looked more like, have you ever seen the pressure get to two teams more in a football match?
I thought this game was atrocious standard. Like neither team. I would struggle to pick a player on the park who I thought played well in this game.
I'd go for Balogun, maybe. Cantwell, I thought, had a decent game.
Yeah, you're maybe right.
In flashes.
And obviously Cyril Dessers scores a couple of goals, but he still somehow manages to not look entirely convincing. Like
he's just the most uneasy on the eye striker. He's cumbersome. He's all over. He's never going to look good.
And even the second goal, he takes two goals at it. So it's like everything's just a bit. And I mean, Dessers must have scored. I'm saying this off the top of my head. He's probably scored 20 goals this season. Yeah. I mean, and if you said to Rangers fans, you're going to sign a guy who's going to score 20 goals for you this season. I mean, I know Rangers the standards are a bit higher, but you're like a 20 goal striker for them is still good. But yeah, he has been quite a disappointment, I would say.
Yeah, I still think he has. Yeah, and to go to the beginning of this game, even before it, and talking about the pressure tells on Naismith.
Yeah,
that decision the decision not to play Cochrane, not just one of your best players, but also one of your most dependable players in two separate positions. You know you're going to get a performance out of Cochrane. I know he's going to get a performance out of him. And he's done this before. He tries to he seems to get caught up in big games. He's done it in derbies where he makes sort of quite strange decisions pre-match in it. And then the last game that they played against Rangers, and obviously the main beneficiary, I think, of Cochrane being on the bench is Rowles, and the fact that he's playing.
The main beneficiary is Philippe Clement, let's be honest.
Yeah, well, it's Cyril Dessers.
Yeah.
But Rowles has had woeful games against Rangers specifically this season. And the reasoning from Naismith didn't really add up either. He was talking about experience, dead balls. You can still play Kingsley. You've mostly played him centre half, but this maybe leans into something that we spoke about before we done the top 12 fullbacks, that Kingsley plays a lot in a back three, and he has played some games as a two in a back four, but when it's come to playing against the best, that possibly Naismith doesn't trust in that case. But no matter what, he's been proven wrong, because Rowles is pathetic in both goals for different reasons that we'll come on to. But right away, that stuff like that always if you're a fan, stuff like that sends me doolally. When, it's just, there must be a page in a book when you practice become a coach in Scotland where you feel like you've got to do it, because I feel like it happens all the fucking time.
It's a lot of them. Like, Derek McInnes was bad for it, for always picking Dom Ball for Aberdeen in every single big game out of nowhere. There is something with these guys that it's like they feel they have to just do something different because it's a big game.
Martindale with Bartley being one of the most famous.
And I thought, just like your team have got there by being good at what they do, just continue to be good at what you do. But to be fair, none of them, that does not justify some of the other stinking performances.
Either team,
like Kenneth Vargas has, to me, been quite. It's a slow start, but he's been quite good of late. And that was an absolute stinker of a performance that he turned in, an all-timer. Rangers gifted Hearts lots of opportunities to get themselves back into that game after that early goal. I thought Rangers started the game fairly well, and when they got the goal, even though it was from a bit of a mistake, you thought, right, they've kind of, they're settled here. They've settled much better than they used to. But you knew from everything you've seen from this Rangers team over the last month or so, there's chances for Hearts in this, and they were gifted chance after chance, not like glaring openings.
It's situations. They were gifted situations over and over again, in and around the box, when they had numbers available and the wrong decision was taken. either by Forrest, but mainly the main culprit being Vargas. I also thought, Shankland gets away with murder. When you watch him live on the telly, it's a circle wank. It's quite incredible. Where everyone that's commentating they go so far to alleviate anything that he possibly does wrong and talk up everything he does. I do get it. He's a Scottish player who scored near 30 goals in Scotland. So I kind of get where that's coming from. He's not Old Firm. It's an easy one to back. But Shankland was just going from sort of like the sublime to the ridiculous quite quickly in a lot of his moves. He would take a good touch turn, then he would try and turn back. He'd lose the ball. I thought he had a poor game, just like Forrest did, just like all the attacking players at Hearts did. He deserves more criticism because he's Lawrence Shankland. He's the captain.
He's the leader, yeah. And
he's the leader that's meant to do it.
He's supposed to be there to knit that attack together because the other guys are young, obviously young guys. Like George Grant's not a young guy, but he's less experienced in Scottish football than Shankland and all the rest of it. Another player who played very poorly, Grant.
Just done nothing.
That's what you've seen a wee bit too much from him. I think he's a nice footballer, and when he turns up. But then it continued to be the case. For example, they brought Oda on and he had a really big chance. Obviously, he didn't do a lot and then he had a really big chance and he set himself so nicely for touching that chance. You're like, right, you've done the right thing here. Lather that into the net past Butland. And I think there was about 5 minutes for Hearts to still
get another one.
And that game is suddenly a bit live for them.
And he was getting smashed about before that. That was just the situation. But yeah, it just seems like I was sort of trying my head before coming on, trying to rate all the differently hopeless decisions from attacking players. And that's before we talk about Lundstrom, again, another one who would 1 minute look like he's going to have a good game. And he would spray and he would take a nice pass in a back heel. Next minute, he's just handing the ball to Hearts in really dangerous areas. I felt like every player was almost playing in that fashion. And then, but you go you've got the Vargas one when he gets to the byline and he's got loads of players in the box and he cuts it back 30 yards to a Rangers player. The other one where he could have crossed it and I think possibly to Shankland, who's goal side at this point for a tap-in. And he waits and he takes 2 extra touches. And then Tavernier is able to block it off. You've got Dijon Sterling, who does really well to get to the byline and then inexplicably tries to what looks like shoot across the ground. And then you've got Diomande, who I thought was still the best player in the park, and someone who you could see his quality was above everyone else. But also another one where he dribbles past about 4 guys, then he just leathers the ball over the bar, and that's all before we get to the main man himself in Fabio Silva.
Yeah, so touching on Diomande, and I think we had this discussion yesterday. Diomande is a player who you watch for 5 minutes and you're like, you look like a proper footballer. You look like you glide. Everything is done so easily. His body shape is so good. He's so confident in tight positions. And it's not all, it just doesn't quite get pieced together for him yet. There are just it's like you said, he'll make all those good decisions and then do something wrong, because I thought, was it the Old Firm game when they got beat, or one of them got subbed early, even got subbed at half time? And I was like, that doesn't, I know his decisions haven't been good, but that didn't make sense to me, because he was the one who was
he's the one who always wants it. Yeah, he's the one who makes some. He's the one who gives you impetus and drives you up, which he done yesterday as well. Diomande's the one that even if he's playing poorly, won't go and shirk it, and he will still drive you forward. And to be honest, there was periods in that game where he was the main guy driving Rangers forward, even when they were shit in the first half against Celtic. In the 3-3 game recently, Diomande was the one that was driving them forward. He makes them an infinitely better team. And someone with Diomande, I believe that if they sign and get a more settled midfield, Diomande will shoot for the stars, if you know what I mean. He might only last a season before someone else brings him in, because he looks like when he puts it all together, he's got the full package. He has all the attributes needed to be an amazing midfielder. But yeah, it was just the pressure just seemed to get to so many players in this game. And it was obviously, and this is what will frustrate Hearts. Hearts could have won that game without playing well. And it's very rarely you can say you could have beat the Old Firm without actually playing well. And I think that could have happened in that game.
I don't blame Shankland for this type of thing, because he didn't have chances in the game, but had a couple of half chances falling to Lawrence Shankland, and he scores them. As you say, even with nothing else changing in this game, Hearts could have won it. And I mean, to me, the main blame comes from that supply, especially on the right hand side, because Sterling, for all the good things he brings to the Rangers team, as a left back, he neglects his left back duties so much, which is why Vargas was constantly getting
free
space.
Yeah.
And
it's what made Vargas look worse, is because every time he was in a good area, he had time to pick what he wanted to do.
And then you obviously mentioned Silva, like it was Umar Sadiq stuff, right? I mean, I sort of like that. So that's instantly what you thought of, because Umar Sadiq, like the only thing I remember him doing for Rangers, and a guy who ends up having a good career, he's like playing for Real Sociedad. But he's the only thing I remember him doing was going round. Would it have been Joe Lewis? I assume it was still Joe Lewis, going round him in that. I think it was the Lewis Ferguson game where Aberdeen beat them in the League Cup semi-final, and trying to dive instead of score. I want to believe that Silva wasn't trying to take a dive there on the basis that there was literally not anyone near him. But is he like, what else is he trying to do? Is he trying to like reshape his body, or what?
The way this is the thing. It's the way he falls. It's not like he doesn't look like he stubbed his toe in the grass or something like that, where you're trying to figure it out. And like we say, like Dessers is really unselfish to pass it to him, and possibly it's going to go like that. And see, everyone's just trying to understand. So you few people start stretching for stuff, and like the ball's maybe going behind them.
It's a wee bit behind them, but
you just, when you're that close to the goal, you just sort of all you have to do is divert it, or take a touch.
Yeah, take a touch. You had time,
and then rifle it in. But it looks like to me he's not maybe not quite comfortable with how it's going to come to him. He's maybe not got his feet sorted, and he's just presumed someone's behind him, and he's just decided that's my if gun to head, that would be what I think the thought process and what to do, because it just looks too much like a dive. It looks too much. The style of fall is diving, and I just feel like that's probably what's happened.
Yeah, and it was just like that would frustrate you, because I think he has been possibly the single worst signing of the January window. I can't think of anyone who's been worse. Like after the fanfare around him, like
because you got pound for pound.
Pound for pound. Like
because obviously he scored a few goals in that.
Yeah, but I mean, how many of them have been
mattered?
I mean, I'm going to look this up, and no doubt he'll scored the winner in some game against Ross County that I can't remember or something. But
he scored the second against Hibs in the cup.
It feels like
sealed it.
He's been.
He's 9 men.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what you think, and I think people sometimes get a wee bit. There's these 4 goals. Rangers 3-0 Livingston. Fair enough, it was the first goal, but you're Livingston Ibrox. Rangers 2-0 United to ice the cake there. The 5th goal in a 5-0 victory over Hearts, and then, as you said, the one against 9-man Hibs. It's not what you expect from a guy. I mean, yes, Rangers did not pay £35 million for him, but at some point, £35 million changed hands between who and who. Let's not get into that, but £35 million is a quoted fee for this player.
And it starts to look dodgier and dodgier. There's more that you see of, because Silva's, it's not the only loan deal he's had. It's like the 3rd unsuccessful loan spell he's had,
because he doesn't have it. He maybe will be a nice footballer, but he doesn't have the fortitude to be a professional footballer, and that's not just like I have to run through brick wall stuff. It's just literally he's not putting himself in the right positions. He's not physically there. He lacks any of the necessary skills to be a top level footballer, which is what Wolves sign him as. Could he carve out a career at a club like at Rangers? Potentially, like eventually, but probably not. But it's just it's just like those types of incidents are summed up all of his Rangers career. I thought that game against Celtic was one of the single worst performances I've ever seen from a player, and he obviously gets that penalty, which I mean is to me a bad decision, but what's going on there? And it was telling. I think it was McCoist that made the point, I think, on commentary, that Ross McCausland, I mean, who, talking of very much not good enough players, Ross McCausland was brought on ahead of him. Like, you think fair enough he's been dropped for Seema, but when Seema limps off, and that's a big boost for Hearts, obviously, because Seema's one of the Rangers players this season who's been good, and I think him having a period out has not helped Rangers. And you think, right, surely your kind of marquee signing is the guy that you bring on now, and instead it's like the kind of Huddy youth player.
Yeah. The one that you hope's going to be good because of his background. But like, I mean, when you move on to Hearts, that you're talking about the substitution in the game, like Cammy Devlin, I think was the right call. And I think Hearts' best period in the game coincided with Devlin doing what you what you expect him to do.
Yeah.
When he started getting people's faces, because a lot of what Devlin does, like he does get into the box quite a lot. For example, when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about this more when Devlin was a first 11 player, and we saw him more regularly than we have done maybe for the whole of this season. But he used to, just because he had so much energy, he always ended up everywhere on the park. So even if he's not the ideal player to get the ball in the box, he would often break into the box, another guy, another person to worry about, leaving space for their people, because he just had that energy to be everywhere. And in this game, like, and also he's not amazing on the ball, but he can make a pass. He's reasonable enough, and he can get in people's faces, interceptions, win tackles, and press. So I thought like when I saw that he was playing, I was like, yep, I get this. They've seen the blueprint for what's been happening to Lundstrom in recent weeks, in the Ross County game, Dundee game, and in the Celtic 3-3 game. They're thinking, right, there's Lundstrom's had a wild season. And I was talking to someone else in our chat about the fact that Lundstrom's best, there's no one with a bigger gap between their best and their worst than Lundstrom. But I do think a lot of the time is people give him too much respect because of the team he plays for. And sometimes when you see people get in their face, it really works. And Lundstrom gets flustered and he makes mistakes. So I was thinking, right, spot on, bring Devlin in. And the idea is he's just going to break from that midfield when Lundstrom gets the ball, and he'll stop Rangers. But he didn't do it. I don't know if that was, and it wasn't, but the period that he does start doing it, that's when Hearts look their most likely. They get a lot of territory and they go. So I found that with Devlin, just you use him till you can't. You use him till the booking comes and he makes one more foul and he's not allowed to make another one. Then you hook him. But I felt like when he went off, it's like he could have done more. That you could see what could have happened with Devlin in the team.
And it's the fact you're taking him off for like a young guy. Like I know they've got high hopes for Tate and stuff, and he probably is. I mean, we've not seen enough to know exactly, where his ceiling is, but maybe they thought was just like fresh legs and energy and stuff like that. But it's like, yeah, you're taking off a guy who can change the game, and let's be fair, Beningame is a much better footballer all round than Devlin. Like both of them, yeah. But maybe he's the one you take off in this game because he wasn't impacting it. He wasn't really getting.
He looked tired. He looked unfit.
Yeah, he's your budget version of what we described with Diamande, which is like every time he sees the ball, you're like, this guy has so much class in him, but sometimes it doesn't all piece together, and I don't think it pieced together in much of his Hearts career, to be honest, but it didn't, especially in that game.
He never seems to be able to, I don't know the reasons, but he never really seems to be able to recover from injuries fully. He never seems to be able to get back, and it seems like you lose a bit more of every game. It's almost like, it's like the energy bar on in Street Fighter or whatever, and every time he comes back, he's lost another chunk than what you do. Or when you play FIFA on a season, and like the players get tired, and I feel like that's what happens with Beningame, and maybe like a good pre-season and a big long rest, and he might be able to piece it together. But again, he's the guy that you want to hang your hat on. He's the fulcrum, and they're not able to really do that. But they don't have anyone else who can do that role.
It's Hearts are clearly a very good team this season. I think they finished third, because the results have been superb. They've had a level of consistency that is very rare for any club outside the Rangers.
Even their better teams have struggled to do that.
Like like in terms of the points tally they get, it will be close to some of the McInnes Aberdeen teams if they do well after the split. Like that, they are a very good team this season. But in the bigger moments, it's just not really. I felt they went down with a whimper in both of those semi-finals against Rangers. To be honest, like
in the bigger games, like even I know they won one of the derbies, for example, but it was a hopeless game that Shanklin scored a goal at the end, and that's 4 games. That's 3 games against sort of like a rubbish Hibs team. and like and the two of them are draws. I'm just echoing the idea of like that when the big moments and the big opportunities and the big games have come, they've more been their consistency at humping bottom six teams. That's really been the key component, which is good. McInnes Aberdeen, Jack Ross's Hibs, that gets you the points. That's what gets you into third. That's the main. But again, it's what makes you fall short at this point. It also, those kind of managers and those kind of teams, they can lack memories, and memories are important for fans. Like when they want to get behind a young manager like Stephen Naismith.
And I mean, they'll get the chance in Europe. No doubt about that. Next season, they obviously already had, I would say, a big one in that Rosenborg win, which was a pretty impressive comeback. But they obviously then, I don't say went down with a whimper, because I thought played well against PAOK at Tynecastle, but then they obviously got absolutely smashed out in Greece and stuff. So they maybe lacked that this year, but they'll have bigger chances. They'll have plenty of games, at least 8, but potentially 10 games in Europe next season, depending on which competition they end up in the groups of and stuff like that. And they'll have chances, and it's always a big ask when you're lined up there, looking at, even if we beat Rangers today, we've then got to go and beat Celtic in the final. It's not been done in the semi and final since Aberdeen in the 90s, I think, in either competition. I think. Sorry, I researched this yesterday, and of course, have I written it down? No, I haven't. But it was certainly a long time ago. I want to say it was like 1990-91 season or something. That was the last time it was done. Maybe in the League Cup, would that be then? And so it's a big ask for Hearts, but yeah, I don't think they gave themselves the best chance of doing it by the formation, and they definitely didn't do it the way they played. Craig Gordon was fine. I don't think either of the goals you would put down as a mistake, but also I don't think he did anything that stood out in the game, because he's obviously the one that you're watching. I don't think you lose anything by picking him instead of Clark for this game or whatever, but it's interesting, obviously, with a view to the Euros. But the fact he's getting minutes now says to me he'll probably end up in that squad, and that's, I think, right for the Scotland squad anyway to have. I mean, it's weird, obviously, if we end up with two Hearts goalkeepers in the squad. It's unusual, but it probably has the right call, because he's got that experience, and that'll be important. And
it's better than bringing Liam Kelly. Simple as that.
So, fundamentally,
if you really want to boil this down, but yeah, I was just looking at the subs there. I'm just thinking, because we're talking about the subs all having subs all seem to, apart from Junior Hoylett and
Sockler came on and scored.
And Sockler, yeah, we've got like Aberdeen seem to get theirs, but the other three teams, all their substitutions seem to make them weaker, because like Barry Mackay was pointless. Oda pointless when he came on. Tate, don't want to rub out a young guy. He was trying to take responsibility. He was the one driving with the ball and trying to break between the lines that got them. The Rangers won the ball back for
I would say for
their second goal.
Lembikisa was probably an upgrade on Atkinson, because I thought Atkinson was stinking. I thought he had a really bad game, but on the whole, I agree with you.
And on Rangers, then I mean, you don't need me to go through them all. Like Tom Lawrenson, I don't remember him do. Tom Lawrenson, I don't remember doing anything.
I would, if you had told me he hadn't come, if I hadn't just checked while you were talking, I would not have remembered him being on the park. And likewise, Raskin, he got booked. I don't know. I don't remember it.
But some weekend again, and and they were both spectacular games in their own ways.
Yes, and I mean, the Scottish Cup semi-final weekend is always one of the best weekends of football. It's disappointing for the neutral, probably, that is the that those two clubs have won, and it's quite funny that obviously it's 22 years since they've played each other in the Scottish Cup final, and it's these two teams that are the ones that eventually do. You think of the good Rangers and Celtic teams that have been fighting out for titles against each other in part of that period, like especially obviously in the early time after 2002, and then it's these two stuttering teams, and I think we're in for a fairly high scoring cup final, actually. With these two teams. I don't think it's going to be any other way.
We look forward to it, and I wonder if who wins the league will have an impact. Blah blah blah. But yeah, it should be a good end to the season, at least at the top end.
Well, so Tony, thank you for joining me. We may just keep this under an hour, which will be an achievement. Thanks to all the listeners for listening along. And thank you to those of you who continue to contribute to our Patreon. There will be more Patreon content going up over the coming weeks, as there always are. You can sign up for that at patreon.com/Terrace Podcast, where for £2 a month you get, I think, a couple of extra episodes a week, and for £5 a month you get tons of extra content, literally like almost something every day coming out there. Consider signing up, but even if you don't, and if you just enjoy this free weekly stuff that we're doing, or sorry, twice a week stuff that we're doing for free, then that's also absolutely fine. These podcasts are now being put on YouTube as well. If you haven't already, consider subscribing to the Terrace Podcast YouTube account. There's set a target of 1,000 subscribers before the end of the season. I have no idea how close or otherwise we are to that, but I think we're getting there. So any one piece of help that you could do towards that would be great. And yeah, apart from that, we'll be back on Thursday with probably a lower league show. In fact, definitely a lower league show. And yeah, I wish you all the best for your week, and I look forward to speaking to you soon.
Cheers.